from there. My name is Gerald Housel. I came on the Indianapolis Fire Department July 9th, 1969, and I retired December the 1st of 2005. So just a little over 36 years.
What side of town did you grow up in, go to school?
I was raised on the west side of town. I went to Washington High School. I lived in Eagledale, but at that time, Northwest High School hadn't been built, so Washington was the closest one, so that's where I went to school.
And what made you decide to go and get on or try out for IFD?
Well, I was in the Air Force, and I was in the Air Force for 4 years, and I got out in April of 1969. And I went just to have a job. I went back to my old job, which is at a steel foundry, and I hadn't planned on doing that the rest of my life. So I was talking to my dad. My dad was on the fire department, and he said, why don't you try it? It's a good job, good pension. I said, okay. So went down, took the little test that they used to give you, nothing like it is now, and got accepted. And I come on in July of '69, and I loved every minute of it.
And that was a few years after they did the 3 shifts?
Yeah, that was after the 3 shifts. I think the 3 shifts started in '66, and I came on in '69.
What shift did you go to?
When I first came on, it was the C shift, and I've been on all 3 shifts, so they're all about the same, really. And my dad was on 27 years, and I was on 36 years on, and my son's on the job now, and he's been on 16 years. So there's been a Housel on the fire department since 1948, which I'm very proud of.
That's really neat. What was, could you just talk about the process of applying and getting hired and going through recruit school?
Yeah, the process really, compared to now, really wasn't much. We went and took a little employment test, and then we had to meet with a psychologist, and he asked us a few questions, and they just chose from that. Then we were in a recruit class, and we were the first paid class. And that, but before, guys they would go to their regular job during the day, and then in the evening they would come to the fire academy and learn firefighting tactics and that kind of stuff. But we were the first paid class. That was our job. We were paid, and we did a lot of layouts during recruit school. And at that time, there wasn't any cab over apparatus, so it was, we were bailing off the back end with the hose in our hand and a plug wrench, and we did a lot of ladder raises, ladder carries. The EMS part of it at that time was not near as sophisticated as it is now. We had a green Red Cross book that was the extent of our EMS training, and we would have guys. The squads would come out and take us through the squad, show us where their equipment was and that kind of stuff. And that's about the extent of our first aid training.
Did you spend any time on squads where you did some EMS?
Yeah, I drove Squad 14 for a while. I think I was there maybe 3 years. I enjoyed it.
When you were on a squad and there's not a lot of other companies doing EMS, did you bear the load of did you go around all around the city?
Yeah, well, I was on Squad 14. I drove Squad 14, and we had a large area to cover. And the neighborhood was low income, ghetto kind of neighborhood and we had a lot of runs, a lot of shootings, stabbings, and that kind of stuff. And the equipment has changed. The EMS equipment stuff's changed. We used to have an inhalator that didn't work very well, but it was all we had, so. And then they got, now they have extrication and they have paramedics, and that part of the job has really evolved. They're really on top of their game now.
Was there a lot of resistance to going EMS, as you saw?
I don't know if there was as much resistance as there was the thought of guys happened to go back to school, going to EMS school, and passing all the tests and that kind of stuff. I think it was just something different, but I think it made the department more professional. Where we were more in the public's eye, and the fire department, when we come, people are glad to see us. As opposed to the police department. They're glad we're there. They know we're going to help them, whether it's through EMS work or they're protecting their property. So, but that's come a long way.
What was it like to be a sub? Like, what was expected of you?
I enjoyed subbing. I subbed for 2.5 years, and it gives you a chance to see how different companies, how different officers operate. How they conduct themselves at fire scenes, and you learn a lot. You get your basic training in the training academy, but when you come out on the street and sub around, you get to see different ways to do things. But I enjoyed it. I did it for 2.5 years, but I was ready to go regular when I did.
So when you're sub, what was your kind of level of expectation? What were you expected to do, and how were you?
Well, I don't think that's. I've been retired 11 years, but I don't think that's changed. They expect subs to, when they come into a house, to do just about everything. You got to help with all the housework. You got to cook. You got to make the coffee. You got to help anybody that's doing something. And I always tried to have the subs that came into my station make sure that they were a part of the station. Don't go back into a room by yourself and read, that's fine if you want to later, but be involved with what's going on in the station. And I think that's a good thing for the subs to do, so they can find out about people.
Can you talk about that kind of interaction? You just kind of mentioned it, instead of going off and reading or hiding somewhere. How to fire? What's the dynamics of a good crew at a firehouse?
Well, it's if a sub comes in and is kind of hesitant to do anything, you got to say something to them, because that's how you learn to fit in at a firehouse, is how you conduct yourself, doing work, and I think that's what you try to do, is to fit in, and hopefully learn. That's what I got out of subbing. I think I learned a lot.
What were some of the qualities of an officer when you were subbing that you looked up to, that maybe they showed you around and they went kind of above and beyond?
Well, I think a couple of the officers I worked for, they were respected. They did things the right way. They had their crews back. Captain Jack Fagan, he was a captain 31s, and he was a great guy to work for. He told you what he expected from you, and if he didn't get it, he'd let you know. But if you did a good job, he'd let you know also. I really enjoyed working or subbing with him. And Kevin White was another guy that I worked with that I respected. He was a good fireman and a lot of fun to work with, and he was well respected also.
And how did you learn to, because IFD's kind of is known for aggressive interior attack. How did you learn all those?
Well, when I first come on, we didn't have masks, and you just learn from the guys that you worked with how you can survive in that, because if you go in without a mask, you're gonna be down on your knees real quick, because it's gonna put you there, and they teach you how you can get air out of your coat, you can get out of your sleeve, and we always work in pairs, and so if a guy had too much, you had to go back out, and that was pretty tough, and some guys had metal helmets. And you get your ears burnt, and we didn't have hoods at that time, and it was a whole different department then, But you just learn different things, how much you can take and how much you can't.
Did you guys have to buy your own gear at the time?
No, no. Well, we didn't. No, we didn't. We got a clothing allowance, but when I came on, they provided our our boots and helmet and fire coat. So, and that's about all we had. We didn't have hoods and we did have to buy our own gloves. So it's different now.
Because you spent a lot of time where there's a lot of change. I mean, before you, there was probably a little bit of change, but not kind of the same ways of doing things. But then as soon as you came in, like the EMS, hazmat, extrication, the equipment change, radios, can you just kind of touch on all that?
Yeah, and the equipment change and the safety part of the job, it really changed. Like I said, when I first came on, we didn't have any cab-over vehicles. Now that they're all cab-over, nobody rides on the back step anymore, and that was pretty dangerous. And the equipment that you wear to a fire, your coats and helmet and tanks. I mean, they're just such a big change in the safety part of it and the safety regulations, and it's all for the good. I know some of it doesn't go over too well, and I understand that, but the department's doing it for your own good. I think now they have to wear your mask when you're overhauling and doing that kind of stuff. But we didn't have to do that before. But I understand it's all for the good, and the hazmat part of it. I mean, our department has tremendous hazmat teams, and they do a great job. And it seems like everything that happens, we've got an answer for it. Our department, whether it's rope rescue or it's extrication, it's hazmat, EMS. I think we've got the best fire department around.
I agree. Could you talk about the kind of friendly competition between busy companies that are close to each other getting in there?
Yeah, and that I hope that still goes on. I'm sure it does. To get there, I had when I was on the Engine 22, I had a great chauffeur, Charlie Smith. He knew the neighborhood upside down and backwards, and he would always try to get there first. And it's just a matter of pride, getting there, getting laid out, and getting water on the fire first. I don't think that'll ever. I hope it doesn't ever change, because it's kind of the fun part of going on a run. We got there first, got water on it. Where you guys been? Yeah.
Also benefits the public too, because they know, hey, these guys are trying to get in here as fast
Exactly.
as they can to put my fire out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Did you ever have any stories where you're coming in at the same time and it's a mad rush to get things connected and hooked up and get in there, and you're at the doorway or anything like that? Do you ever have any stories?
Well, we used to run in with the 31s a lot, going north of us, and we had a I can't remember the name of the street. It was a good fire. It was like a 3-story house, and it was going all over, and they didn't lay out, and so we, and they should have beat us in there, but we beat them in there and got hooked up and everything, got water on it, and we always kind of dug them about that kind of stuff, But the competition, it's a friendly competition, but it's like you say, it's good for the public also, because they know we're going to get there and get the job done.
Right. And what are the pros and cons of riding the tailboard?
Well, it was an exciting ride, and as now, the chauffeurs, they were chauffeurs back then, not engineers. They wanted to get out of the house fast, so you had to get your boots on, get on the back step, and get an arm around the rail, and then put your coat on as you're going out the door. And that's sometimes pretty tricky. But you learned how to get dressed on the back step on the way there, and get your spanner belt on, that kind of stuff. The cons I thought was in bad weather. When it's pouring down rain or it's hailing, and you got your arm over the bar and you're riding backwards and it's beating the heck out of you. You think, oh my gosh, hope we get there. But it was exciting. It was dangerous, and I understand why they went to cab overs and that kind of stuff. But it was pretty exciting. Yeah.
No, I'm jealous. Well, how was your how was your career different as a private, and then as opposed to being an officer when you got promoted? How did things changed for you?
Well, you have to go from being led to leading, you know, and I think yeah, as a leader, you had to gain the respect of your crew. You know, you had to do everything that they did, and I tried to outwork my crew. And when I was 7, I thought I was a hard worker too, you know. But I think you know, as an officer, you try to gain their respect by doing the right thing, having their back, and letting them know what you expect. And as a backstepper, I always tried to do the right thing, do what the officer wanted me to do, and do it right.
What is that kind of your style, to kind of just lead by example?
Example, yeah, lead by example. That's the way I like to do things.
What was for the average person who wouldn't know, what's firehouse life like? I mean, you're living with these people for 24 hours at a time. What's that kind of?
Well, it's a family life, really. I mean, you're there while you're on the job a third of your life at the firehouse, and so you become a close-knit family. You know, everybody knows everybody's family. You know, if they're having problems, that kind of stuff, and they do. Your crew usually does things together. You know, they'll go out and party or whatever, and you know, that kind of stuff. And it's just the camaraderie that is probably the best thing about the fire department. Is personally, you know, you get. I always like the shift change in the morning, you know, because you got one shift coming and one shift leaving, and you hear different stories about this and that, and you know what you did, what they did, you know. Then the next morning a different shift comes in, and you get to leave, and you hear different stuff, and all the bantering that goes on in the mornings. I really did enjoy that. I was always the first one up in the morning, and I'd always have coffee with Wayne Chandler, you know, because he was the first one in, and we'd, you know, just talk about things on his shift and my shift and what was going on, and I really enjoyed that part of it.
Let's see. I've already covered a lot of these. Do you remember your first fire?
Oh yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, I was actually on ladder 22, and what had happened, I was in recruit school, and we had probably a week to 10 days left in school, and they had the explosion on 38th Street, the wake up filling station. They had the explosion over there, and one fireman, Spanky Inns, was killed. And several firemen were injured in that fire. So they came to our class, and they took me and Tim Whitaker and Louis McQueen out of class and put us in the companies. Well, I went to ladder 22, and my my very first run was a bedroom fire. It was an upstairs, and I worked with Steve Dreyer on the back step, and we threw some ladders, and he said, "Come on, let's go in and see what we need to do inside." And it was an upstairs apartment, and the engine had got out and got it knocked down. It was pretty much out, and we got about halfway up the stairs, and I thought, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" I mean, because I was choking and spitting and coughing, and I'm thinking, the engine guys they're up there, and they've been up there and put the fire out, and I'm coming in after it's basically knocked down, and I'm thinking, I'm not sure if I can get up the steps, you know. But again, you learn how to do stuff, and that was my first fire. First run was a fire, and my second run I got in a wreck. The ladder went around a corner and hit a parked car. Called my dad and said, "You ever been in a wreck?" And he said, "No." I said, "Well, I just had a wreck," you know. So yeah, I do remember that, you know, and it was unfortunate that I had to be in that situation because of the fire on 38th Street at the wake up fire. So, but yeah, I remember that day.
So they just came and said you three are going.
Yeah, we volunteered, so
Nice.
you know they took us. Yeah.
So you got a little bit more time on than everybody else.
Yeah, just a little bit, you know, and yeah, we didn't sleep well that night. You know, we just
I'll bet.
yeah.
It'd be pretty intimidating.
Yeah, and at that time they didn't have the you know, they just tone your station in. It's you heard everybody's runs, you know, so you just kind of had to lay there and listen, you know.
Make you do night watch a lot.
Yeah, yeah, that was fine.
Let's see here. Were you ever involved in any kind of rescue of a civilian or anything like that, or on the scene like that?
Yeah, the one that sticks out in my mind, we had an apartment fire at 16th and Central. It was early in the morning, came in, I want to say 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and when we come out of the firehouse, it was in the air, we could see it in the air, and we got there, and I mean, people were hanging out of windows. The people were jumping out of windows. They were throwing mattresses out, jumping on the mattresses. And so I was on the ladder, so we started throwing ladders and you know, going up and getting, I mean, I don't know how many people we got out. And I was amazed that there wasn't any fatalities in that fire, because it was rolling when we got there. And like I say, people hanging out the window, and you know, you just, which window I go to first, you know? But we, you know, threw a bunch of ladders up and got people out, and that was a pretty exciting run.
Did it go pretty smooth then?
Yeah, it really did. Yeah, I know Jake Jacoby was on the engine, and he made a rescue, and it got blown out of the window, and he was on the ladder and got blown out, you know, but. It was a pretty big deal. I mean, we had people everywhere.
Wow. Were you ever injured on?
Yeah, I was at the 22s again. I was on the engine, and just across the railroad tracks there was an industrial complex over there, and we didn't know much about it. We got to run there, and when we pulled up, we saw it looked like a little haze in the air, and it was, you know, it didn't look like smoke. So we go walking in, and it ended up being chlorine gas, and we got in a little bit too far, and before we realized what was going on, and I ended up going to the hospital. I had to stay overnight, but also this cloud, you know, came out into the street, and it made Charlie Smith was my engineer chauffeur at that time. Made him sick too. He didn't go to the hospital, made him sick, but ended up writing an official report about it, and trying to document that at that time we only had 3 air packs on the engine, and we wrote it up to try to get 4 on there, so in case the engineer is out like that and has some problems or whatever, he can put a mask on. And I think we got that done. So there's at least 4 air packs on the apparatuses now.
Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to work holidays, miss special events?
Yeah. Our family was kind of used to it because my dad was on the job, and we kind of knew that, that at that time when I was first married, I didn't have any kids, and it wasn't too bad at that point. But when I had kids and had to work Christmas and Thanksgiving and those kind of things, it was kind of hard. But it's just that's part of what goes on. You just of course. The more time you get on a job, you can get those days off. But we kind of knew what to expect. How holidays were going to fall.
You talk about how some guys with older kids sometimes traded with.
Sure. Yeah. Guys that didn't have kids would a lot of time would work for, or part of the day anyway. Work for guys that they had young kids, and the Christmas thing and Santa Claus and all that. So yeah, it was guys
Taking
worked.
care of each
They,
other.
yeah, they worked with each other to make sure everything went well.
Do you have any funny stories, like as far as, I mean, we can tell? Maybe some pranks or some kind of funny?
Yeah, what they seem to do every time a new sub would come into the station, you know, everybody do their housework and that kind of stuff. And the sub would always ask another guy on the crew. They wouldn't come to me. They'd go to another guy. You know, which one's my bed? And they would always put them in my bed. You know, so you know at lunchtime, you know, we're sitting there and I'd go through this thing. You know, I've been on the job for 30-some years, and I've slept in this same bed over here for 20 years. And you know, somebody's coming in off the street and decide they want to sleep in my bed. And you could always see the sub get up and walk out and get their bedding off of my bed, you know. But they always did that to the subs, yeah.
My clockwork. What kind of advice would you have for the younger generations coming on now? That's kind of maybe they're a little disconnected with the traditions of the past.
I would say pay attention to what's going on in the firehouse, because you can learn a lot about that, about the job, and I think you have to trust your training. It's a whole lot more sophisticated now than it was when I first came on, because they prepare you for everything, and you have to trust that, and ask questions. You know, when I had subs come in, I said, you know, we're going to do stuff out on the fire ground that maybe you didn't learn in training, but if you have a question, you know, come to me and ask me, and I'll explain why we did it and how we did it, and maybe that'll help you, you know, down the road.
And you think that's a good way for new people to learn? Is
Yeah.
Be more of a mentor instead of a
Yeah, exactly.
see
Yeah.
what they're going to do and tell them what they did wrong after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah.
Show what you
Show them.
expect
Yeah.
them. What year did you retire?
In December of 05.
05.
Yeah.
So I know you're still connected through Bob. What do you miss personally about the department?
Just the camaraderie, you know. It's just everybody, you know, on your shift, on your crew. Everybody pitches in and helps do, you know, especially things around. I was blessed with some good workers on my crews. You know, not only around the firehouse, and we rebuilt the bedroom and the locker room and that kind of stuff. The shops provided the materials and stuff, but you know, these guys did the work, and you just develop a bond. I really miss that. You know, I've had guys, my crew, come out and help me move a mini barn. You know, because you know, I was just talking about it. You know, I said my wife wants it moved from here to there, and I said, you know, I don't want to build a new one. They said, oh well. They came out and cut the roof off of it and moved it, you know. But I really do miss that kind of stuff, you know, the banner that goes on around the firehouse, and the hard work. I really enjoyed the hard work, and I work at a golf course now, so it's not hard work, you know. I miss that part of it, yeah.
Let's see. Did you want to talk at all about, like, we see a lot of things that average public thinks may happen every now and then, kind of isolated, but really is not. You see a lot of bad things and some things that a lot of people probably wouldn't deal too well with. How does a firefighter deal with that over time?
Well, you know, the public in the area that I worked at, most of the time I was on the job, was a low-income section of town, poverty, and it was hard to see, you know, kids growing up in that kind of atmosphere. You know, there wasn't any respect for life. People getting shot and stabbed, and just, you know, just like it was nothing. I think just the poverty that people don't realize what, you go into a house in that section of town, and it's usually not very clean. They've got clothes piled up that haven't been washed. The houses are dirty, and and there's kids there, and you just can tell they're not being looked after. It's hard to see that, and I don't think people realize that. And one thing that I don't think people realize is the way that the police department is treated on the street. They have no idea. I mean, they get no respect. And like I said before, when they see us, they're glad to see us because they know we're here to help. But if the policemen come, it's a different story. But the police department didn't get any respect from the public. It's that I saw a lot of.
That's for sure. People sometimes use, especially in this job, that he or she was a good fireman, and that means a little bit. It's a little deeper than just the saying. What does that mean to you? Somebody say, "Yeah, he was a good fireman."
Yeah. Well, I think it's a hard worker. I think that's the best way to describe it. They were able to. They worked hard. They were able to get in there and get the job done, and you could depend on them to do that. And I know we ran in with several companies that had good firemen. But I had good firemen. I was blessed to have good firemen working with me on my crews. We ran in with the 14s, Jerry Garys and John Zinkin, and at the 5s, Larry Speck. They were just good workers, and you could depend on them. You knew if you're going to go into a fire with them that you can depend on them being there. On my crew, Tim Hedrick and Eric Hoffmeister, and I had good engineers. Mark Kemp was my truck engineer for a while, and Charlie Smith that I talked about before was a great engineer. And I consider them good firemen because they did their job. They were good workers, and they did their job right, and you could depend on them.
Is there anything in those stories?
Not that I can think of.
I was going to ask you about. I remember Bob at the 24s. He'd bring in stuff from your dad, his coins. He used to ride the trolley with, and
Oh yeah.
they get dressed up in their Class A's and come to work.
Yeah.
And get free ride in the bus and the trolley and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You mentioned before about you've 3 generations on the fire department. That spans a lot of years. Like, what did that mean to you when Bob got on the fire department and you realized that your dad was on? He had a great career, you did. Now it's continuing on.
Yeah, I was proud. And I had no idea he even wanted to be a fireman. He went to IU, got a business degree. He got out of school and went to Chicago and went to work for an advertising agency, and he was there, I think, a year, and came home and said he wanted to go on the fire department.
Now he's at a busy company. You spent time in a busy company, and it's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I think we've touched on pretty much everything. If you have anything else you want to add, or
no, I don't think so. Like I say, I had some good crews to work with, and that makes all the difference in the world.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for.
That's it.
Yeah.
Good.
You can think of it. Pretty painless.